Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. Private sector's contribution to investments made for the creation of new assets dips to its lowest level in 11 years. Data from FY24 shows government share of the pie has been inching higher, while the household sector share has been broadly stable. IndiGo co-founder Rakesh Gangwal sells another 5.7% stake in the airline for nearly 12,000 crore rupees, trims his holdings to less than 8%. This is the sixth stake sale in the last 3 years, and the Gangwal family has amassed around 40,000 crore rupees so far. Government retains above normal monsoon forecast even as the rains arrive early. Met Department predicts higher rainfall in June. Rainfall is likely to be normal or below normal in large parts of northeast India. Income Tax Department sends notices to several non-resident Indians and companies who claimed benefits under tax treaties with tax havens like Singapore, Mauritius and Cyprus. Sources say that the taxman suspects some may have set up shell companies as an attempt at treaty shopping. Government moves to build a fifth-generation stealth fighter jet. Defence Ministry moves the project to execution phase, invites bids from the private sector for collaboration. The world's top electric vehicle makers are in the slow lane. Tesla sales plunged 49% in Europe due to Elon Musk's political involvement and rising competition. Shares of Chinese EV giant BYD declines for the second day after reports of heightened regulatory scrutiny by Beijing. US President Trump steps up the attack on Harvard University, threatens to take away $3 billion in grants and distribute it to trade schools across the US. Also moves to cancel federal contracts worth $100 million. Over 80 people reportedly killed across Gaza in the last 24 hours as Israeli bombing continues. Hamas claims to have agreed a US ceasefire proposal, but Israel rejects the claims. Nearly 54,000 Palestinians have been killed so far in Gaza, according to officials. At least 40 containers have washed ashore in Kerala after a ship sunk off the coast. Navy and the Coast Guard raced to contain a potential oil spill. The public has been warned not to go near the containers as they could contain hazardous chemicals. Well, straight to the day's market action. The market declined after a volatile session with the Nifty ending below the 24,900 mark. The mid-cap index continues to outperform. The IT, FMCG and auto sectors snapped the two-day gaining streak. Now, here's the big story. The government has maintained its forecast for above-normal monsoon this year. The Met Department expects rainfall to be 106% of the long-period average. The forecast in June stands at 108% of the long-period average. While large parts of the country are expected to receive above-normal rainfall, northwest and east India could see normal to below normal rainfall. Northeastern states like Arunachal, Assam and Meghalaya are predicted to receive below normal rainfall. Well, the big story from the national capital, private sector's contribution to investments made for the creation of new assets has dipped to its lowest level in 11 years. Now, data from FY24 shows government's share of the pie has been inching higher, while the household sector share has remained broadly stable. Sapna Das is joining us now with more details. Sapna.
India's private sector investment appears to have lost some steam. According to the Ministry of Statistics, the contribution of private non-financial corporations in gross fixed capital formation, or GFCF, which are basically investments for creating assets and can be seen by the green line, declined to 32.4% in FY24, which is a 300 basis points drop year on year and an 800 basis points drop since FY16, when the share of private investments had peaked at slightly over 40%. Perhaps more significantly, it is also the lowest level in 11 years since FY13, when the private sector share was over 34%. So while private sector momentum has weakened, the government has been stepping up. The centre and state share in capital formation depicted by the red line was over 13% in FY24, almost 200 basis points higher year on year. It is also an improvement from FY13, when their share was just over 10%. The rise in government investment is further reinforced by public sector enterprises. Public non-financial corporations' contribution in capital formation, depicted by the yellow line was at 11.8% in FY24, over 200 basis points higher than FY23. This is also above the FY13 level of 10.5% and probably in line with the government's push to public sector-led capital expenditure. Contribution by the household sector, meanwhile, remains broadly stable and is depicted by the green line. In FY24, households accounted for 41.7% of the gross fixed capital formation, lower than FY23. The sector is also off its high of a 43.7% share in FY13, as private investments took some of that space in the earlier years, as is depicted in the bar graphs, in the line graphs. But, however, households still continue to dominate as the largest contributor in capital formation, with a consistent share of over 41% at least in the last 3 years. To sum up, government data is probably signaling a change in investment landscape, with private sector's share investments retreating to a decade low, while government and public sector units are stepping up and households maintain their dominant, though slightly tapering share. As India navigates its investment-led growth narrative, these shifts are crucial to understand the drivers of capital formation and the implications for long-term growth.
Right, Sapna, thanks so much for that. Now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has approved the execution model for the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft. The Aeronautical Development Agency will lead the project in collaboration with private sector entities. The Defence Ministry has said that participants can submit bids individually or through joint ventures. The AMCA project is India's fifth-generation fighter jet program. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, former Defence Secretary G. Mohan Kumar has said that India's self-reliance push will only happen if the government imports critical parts. He added that the government must adopt a mission mode approach for the production of the aero engines.
Self-reliance is an issue which government will have to address, because self-reliance alone is not going to happen, because self-reliance means actually fast production, import of some materials, because we need import critical parts like engines and other things. So long as we are not able to produce our own engine in the country. So the parallel process is that there should be a mission mode approach for production of the aero engine, which is meant for AMCA.
Well, staying with the defence space, shares of Bharat Dynamics rose in trade after a money control report said that the government would procure 500 anti-tank guided missiles worth between 2,000 to 3,000 crore rupees from the company. The acquisition will be aimed at boosting India's armoured warfare capabilities. The acquisition will equip the defence sector's T-90 tanks with advanced missile systems. And British American Tobacco is considering selling partial stake in ITC, while the company made it clear that discussions are underway. It reiterated that there is no guarantee that the transaction will occur, nor are the terms of any potential deal finalized. This comes after the company announced it will divest over 15% stake in ITC hotels by 2026. Well, from hospitality to aviation, IndiGo co-founder Rakesh Gangwal has sold another 5.7% in parent company Interglobe Aviation for nearly 12,000 crore rupees. Gangwal has trimmed his stake in the carrier to under 8%. This is the sixth time since 2022 that Rakesh Gangwal or his family trust has sold stake in the airline via a block deal. Nimesh Shah is joining us now with more on Gangwal's stake sale in the airline. Nimesh.
Who says that aviation doesn't make you money, or for that matter, when the promoter sells, one should not buy? Gangwal has actually sold and actually proved the logic wrong in terms of not making money in aviation. So since 2022, the Gangwal family has consistently sold stake in Interglobe, and they've managed to raise 40,000 crores, which is equivalent to $4.7 billion that they've raised by selling stakes in September of 2022. But that's not done yet. They still own 7.8% stake after today's block deal, which at the current price is valued at 16,000 crores. But do remember, there is a 150-day lockup for the promoters now. So for next 5 months, the Gangwal can't take further stake in Interglobe. But if you look at the history of the stake sale, that's very fascinating. The first block deal started in September of 2022 when they started selling stake. A small stake that they sold in September 2022 and raised close to for 2,400 crores. And the average price was 1927. That's the price at which the first time the Gangwal sold stake. After that, there was a 150-day lockup. So the next block happened in Feb 17 of 2023. That they sold at a marginal discount to the previous block that is at 1882. That time they sold 4% stake and raised close to 3,000 crores. But after that, it's been a fascinating journey in terms of stake sale. The next block happened in 2023 of August. That's when they sold nearly 4% stake, and that price was 24.54, a nearly 30% premium to the last block, and there they raised close to 4,300 crores. So that was in August of 2023. The next block happened after 150 days, which was in March of 2024. That is when the Ganwal family sold 5.8% stake, and that deal happened at 3,242. Another 40% premium from the last block, and that is when they raised 7,000 crores. The next block happened in August of 2024. Another 5.8% stake sold. 10,000 crore is what they raised, and that went for 47.59 rupees per share. And finally, today's block that happened, wherein they sold 5.7% stake. This is today of 2025. 5.7% stake sold, almost 12,000 crores raised at a price of 50 to 50. So from a first block of 1850 to this block of 50 to 50, they've actually, it's been 85% higher than the first block, and consistently they've been selling stake. The good part is, while they've raised money for 40,000 crores, they're still sitting on equity worth 16,000 crores, which they can sell over the next 5 months after the lockup gets over.
Right, Nimish, thanks so much for that. Now, market regulator SEBI has granted final approval to Jio BlackRock Mutual Fund to begin its operations. The entity is a joint venture between Jio Financial Services and BlackRock. SEBI also approved Jio BlackRock Asset Management as the AMC for the mutual fund. The joint venture was first announced in July of 2023. And fintech company Cred is set to announce a fundraise worth $75 million in the coming weeks. Sources have said that the funding round will value the company at $3.5 billion, which is a 45% drop from its 2022 round. Now, founder Kunal Shah will also invest $20 million through his VC firm, QED Innovation Labs. And shares of electric bus manufacturer Olectra Greentech fell in trade today. This after Maharashtra Transport Minister Pratap Sarnaik directed officials to cancel the tender order awarded to the company for failing to meet delivery timelines. Now, without naming the company, Sarnaik posted on X saying that the company has been inactive in supplying over 5,000 leased buses. Now, in response, Olectra clarified that the order is currently under execution by its special purpose vehicle. And the National Company Law Tribunal has deferred the liquidation proceedings for Bhushan Power and Steel till August. This comes a day after the Supreme Court directed a status quo on the matter. The top court's move will allow JSW Steel to file a review petition in the Supreme Court. Remember, earlier this month, the top court had rejected JSW Steel's resolution plan for Bhushan Power and Steel, directing the NCLT to initiate liquidation proceedings against BPSL. Now, the Income Tax Department has sent notices to several non-resident Indians and companies who claimed benefits under tax treaties with tax havens. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the taxman suspects that some may have set up shell companies in an attempt at treaty shopping. Timsy Jaipuria has more details. Timsy, tell us more about the details that the department has sought so far.
Well, that's right. The Income Tax Department is understood to have sent notices to several non-resident Indians and entities based out of Singapore, Cyprus, Mauritius and other such tax havens who have claimed benefits under the tax treaties. Sources have shared that the Income Tax Department is suspecting treaty shopping by these non-resident individuals and entities using tax residency certificates from tax havens to file lower taxes. The Income Tax Department notices have cited that these tax residency certificates from tax havens alone are not enough as a proof to claim treaty benefits under DTAs. Also, these foreign companies must substantiate commercial rationale for investment in India to claim tax treaty benefits. The tax department has also questioned that the tax residency determined by these factors like control over investors, decision-making authority, economic substance, and not just these residency certificates. The tax department suspects that intermediate holding companies in tax havens may be shell companies set up to avoid paying higher taxes, and thus these entities and individuals must answer key questions such as who is the real beneficiary of the Indian investments made by these intermediate holding companies set up in tax havens, what is the commercial rationale for setting up these intermediate holding companies in tax havens, who are the key decision makers at these companies, What is the board composition, employee strength, premises occupied for business purposes, nature of business of these intermediate holding companies in tax havens, and much more. Now to be seen is how these notices are able to find peace with the investments and these NRIs and non-resident entities, along with the tax outgo that the tax department has to manage. Back to you.
Right, Timsy, thanks so much for that. Now, 3,500 crore initial public offering of Scholl's Bangalore, the parent company of Leela Hotels, saw a tepid response on the second day of subscription. The overall issue was subscribed 17%. The retail portion was booked 41%, while the portion reserved for qualified institutional buyers was subscribed 11%. Well, more from the primary markets. The initial public offering of Aegis Vopak terminals was subscribed 35% on the second day of bidding. The portion for retail investors was subscribed 44%, while qualified institutional bidders booked 43%. Non-institutional investors bid for 13% of the portion allocated to them. Coal India Arm's Central Mine Planning and Design Institute has filed draft papers for an initial public offering. The company will not issue fresh shares in the offering. The draft prospectus showed that Coal India plans to sell 7.1 crore shares. CMPDIL operates in the mining sector, offering consulting services for coal and mineral exploration. State-run telecom operator BSNL has clocked profits of 280 crore rupees in Q4. This follows a profit of 262 crore rupees in Q3. This is the first time in 18 years that BSNL has reported profits for 2 consecutive quarters. The government provided a bailout of 89,000 crore rupees to the telecom operator in 2023 to bolster its network. Now, Assam's government has ramped up efforts to attract high-tech manufacturing industries in electronics and semiconductor sector. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, the Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma said that the state government has offered PLI benefits in addition to the centre's programs.
Whatever subsidy PLI you will get from Government of India, we will provide you additional 60%. Suppose you have been able to take 100 rupees from Government of India, Assam will provide you 60 rupees more. Apart from that, we will give you free land in Ratan Tata Electronics City near Guwahati. We will give you other tax incentive. And I think we want to provide a good ecosystem because ultimately the idea is to see that we do not spend foreign exchange where actually we can save. So that's the national goal, and we are trying to align with the national aspiration.
Well, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri will visit the United States from the 27th to the 29th of May. Misri is expected to meet senior officials from the Trump administration. This visit comes amidst President Trump's comments on mediating a ceasefire between India and Pakistan after Operation Sindoor. And the Trump administration has cautioned Indian students studying in the United States against skipping classes or dropping out of their program without informing their respective schools. The U.S. Embassy in India, in an advisory post on X, said that visas of students who resort to such actions could be revoked and they may be rendered ineligible for further visas. Indians account for close to 30% of international students' community in the United States. And staying with Donald Trump, the U.S. president has threatened to redirect $3 billion in grants from Harvard University to trade schools across the country. In a fresh salvo, Trump slammed the Ivy League school for allegedly delaying the release of foreign student records. The attack comes after his administration moved to block Harvard from enrolling foreign students for allegedly promoting left propaganda. Reports have indicated that the Trump administration is preparing to cancel all remaining federal contracts worth $100 million with the university. In a letter, federal agencies have been instructed to find alternative vendors for future services. Now, meanwhile, across the Atlantic, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde has hinted that the euro could become a viable alternative to the dollar. During her speech in Berlin, Lagarde said that declining trust in U.S. economic policies could open the door for euro to play a greater role internationally.
The ongoing changes create the opening for a global euro moment. And this is a prime opportunity for Europe to take greater control of its own destiny with the right policy responses there could also be opportunities. The changing landscape could open the door for the euro to play a greater international role.
Well, Japan has lost its position as the world's top creditor nation to Germany after 34 years. This as Germany's stronger pace of asset growth in 2024 overshadowed Japan's record surge in net external assets. Germany's rise to top is mainly due to its strong trade performance. China followed in third place with $3.5 trillion in net assets. Well, shares of Chinese electric vehicle giant fell with BYD registering losses for a second straight day. This owing to mounting concerns over regulatory scrutiny from Beijing. BYD's steep discounts across several models also stoked fears of a renewed price war in China's EV market. And European sales of Tesla vehicles plunged for the second straight month in April. This as the US electric car maker continues to face reputational damage regionally and rising competition. Tesla's sales fell 49% compared to last year in the region, according to the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. The Musk-owned EV giant's sales tanked nearly 40% year-on-year between January and April. And private lender HSBC Bank has laid off over 20 analysts as the firm plans to restructure its investment banking businesses. As per a Bloomberg report, the cuts will primarily be made in the European division. The restructuring will also include leadership changes within research divisions. And coming up on India Business Hour, at least 40 containers have washed ashore in Kerala after a ship sunk off the coast. Details in just a bit. And you can also catch all CNBC-TV18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Geo Hotstar. Well, in a bid to boost tourism after the Pahalgam terror attack over a month ago, the Jammu and Kashmir government held a cabinet meeting in the area today. This is the first time the government held a meeting outside its summer capital, Srinagar, or winter capital, Jammu. Speaking to the media, Chief Minister Omar Abdullah said that the government has decided to reopen 48 tourist destinations gradually.
बैसरन के हमले के बाद ये तय किया गया कि हमें कुछ डेस्टिनेशंस का एक सिक्योरिटी ऑडिट करना होगा। सिक्योरिटी ऑडिट करने के बाद आहिस्ता आहिस्ता जिन जगहों को खोला जा सकता है उनको खोल दिया जाना चाहिए। मैं भी चाहता हूं कि जो 48 डेस्टिनेशंस का लिस्ट जारी हुआ है उसको हम आहिस्ता आहिस्ता कम करें।
Where at least 40 containers have washed ashore in Kerala after a ship sunk off the coast. The Navy and the Coast Guard to contain a potential oil spill. The public has been warned not to go near the containers as they could contain hazardous chemicals. Defense officials have said that efforts are currently underway to respond to the oil spill. They added that the situation is currently managed and under close observation. Officials confirmed that as of 1:30 p.m. today, no oil has made its way to the shores of Kerala. Neetu, our correspondent from the ground, is joining us now with more details.
The PRO Defence of Kochi has confirmed that as of 1:30 p.m. today, no oil has reached the shores of Kerala. It was a major concern after this vessel sunk. The oil spill, the Coast Guard has been monitoring. They had been taking measures to control this. But at the same time, it was a concern whether the oil will reach the shores. But it is a relief. But the other concern is definitely what is in these containers. Some of these containers had hazardous material. So that is something which is still of concern. People are warned not to go near these containers or anything that afloats. When they see anything like this, they are asked to inform the authorities not to touch any of this, as it can be harmful substances. Most of the containers that came to the shore were empty. Some of them had items like paper rolls and towels and stuff like that. Today, some of the containers which were washed ashore had bundles in them, which has been packed in sacks, while white color sack. So that is something which the officials had to ascertain what is there. But so far, there is no information of any hazardous material reaching the shore. But definitely people of Kerala, especially across the coastlines, are asked to be very careful, not to venture out.
Israeli forces have killed over 80 Palestinians across Gaza in the last 24 hours. Reports suggested that Hamas has agreed to a ceasefire proposal. However, Israeli officials have rejected the claims. Officials have also denied that proposal was put forth by the United States, adding that the Israeli government would accept it. Meanwhile, a World Health Organization spokesperson has said that everyone is suffering in Gaza as hospitals have run out of medical supplies as Israel's blockade continues. And from one war-torn region to another, Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that Russian forces launched over 900 drones against Ukraine in the last 3 days. In a video message posted on X, Zelensky said that there is no military logic behind this. He added that the attacks were a clear political choice of Russia and the choice to keep waging war. And Kremlin has responded to Donald Trump's remarks after he called Russian President Putin crazy. Yesterday, Kremlin spokesperson thanked the Trump administration for his work in mediating negotiations with Ukraine. However, stated that it's an important moment which is connected to an emotional overload of everyone involved. Trump's comments came after Russia launched 355 drones against Ukraine, killing 10 people. And speaking of Ukraine, Germany and Western allies have lifted restrictions on Kyiv to fire long-range missiles into Russia for the first time. This comes after Russia has been constantly bombarding the region with drones. German Chancellor Merz said that this move will help Ukraine defend itself against Russia. In response, the Kremlin has said that this decision is dangerous and is detrimental to reaching a peace agreement. At least 50 people have been injured after a car rammed into a crowd of Liverpool fans during the team's victory parade. The police have arrested a 53-year-old man who was believed to be the driver of this vehicle. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the whole country stands with Liverpool after the horrific incident. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates will continue right here on CNBC-TV18.